Get your hands off me before this entire floor shuts down. The words landed colder than the air conditioning pouring through the high-limit casino room at Crown Mirage Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. For half a second, nobody moved. The roulette wheel kept spinning. Cards snapped against green felt. Somewhere behind the slot machines, a woman laughed too loudly at a jackpot she probably didn't hit. But near table 14, where the velvet ropes separated regular gamblers from six-figure players, the atmosphere cracked open like glass under pressure. Darius Cole stood motionless beside the blackjack table, while a white security guard named Trent Dawson kept one hand clamped tightly around his shoulder like he was removing a criminal instead of a paying guest. Chips worth nearly $80,000 sat stacked in front of Darius in neat towers of black and purple. The dealer looked terrified to even touch them. "Sir, you need to leave the VIP floor immediately," Trent said louder this time, making sure nearby guests could hear him. His voice carried the smug confidence of a man who thought the room already agreed with him. Across the table, a gray-haired man in a tailored white blazer smirked into his whiskey glass. "Told you," he muttered to another gambler. "Guys dressed like that never belong up here." Darius slowly turned his head. Black hoodie, dark jeans, plain sneakers. No watch, no bodyguards. Nothing about him matched the image Crown Mirage sold in its glossy commercials about luxury and prestige. And that was exactly why he wore it. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Darius Cole. The casino lights reflected across polished marble floors like water under neon rain. Every machine chimed with synthetic happiness, while the real tension spread silently between the tables. Darius looked toward the dealer first, not the guard. "Did I break a rule?" he asked calmly. The young dealer swallowed hard, but never answered. Ethan Walker answered for him instead. The floor manager approached with sharp, polished shoes and the kind of smile that only appeared when someone thought they held power. "You were asked twice for VIP verification," Ethan said. "Instead of cooperating, you caused disruption on the floor." Darius glanced at the cameras mounted overhead. There were dozens. Every angle covered. Every word recorded. "Interesting," he replied quietly. Ethan folded his arms. "What's interesting is you sitting in a private gaming section meant for invited guests." A cocktail waitress froze nearby holding a silver tray full of drinks. Two tourists stopped walking. Phones were already beginning to rise from pockets. Darius noticed all of it. He noticed the whispers too. Probably wandered in from Fremont. Security should have removed him earlier. Man doesn't look like a high roller. He had heard those tones before. Different city, different building, same poison underneath. At 23 years old, Darius once got followed through another casino for 40 minutes because a pit boss thought a young black man betting $5,000 hands had to be cheating. He remembered the humiliation more than the accusation. The stares, the suspicion, the certainty that he did not belong near wealth unless he was serving it. Now, 21 years later, the same energy stood inches from his face wearing a manager badge. Ethan pointed toward the elevators. "Last chance. Walk out respectfully, or security escorts you out." The room went still again. Darius looked down at Trent's hand still gripping his shoulder. Then he looked back at Ethan Walker with an expression so calm it almost frightened the dealer. "You're making a 12-minute mistake," Darius said softly. And somewhere deep inside Crown Mirage Casino, 3 executive system alerts suddenly activated at the exact same time. The first executive alert reached the surveillance office 32 floors above the casino floor. A red notification flashed across 6 monitoring screens at once, followed by a silent security code almost nobody in the building had ever seen activated before. Inside the room, 2 surveillance analysts stopped mid-conversation and stared at the monitors showing table 14 from 3 separate angles. One of them leaned forward slowly. "Why is Black 7 active?" he whispered. Down below, Darius Cole remained perfectly still while the energy around him tightened like a wire about to snap. Ethan Walker noticed several guests filming now and immediately shifted into his polished customer service voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, there is no issue here," he announced with fake calm. "We are simply handling a routine verification matter." A younger white man wearing a navy suit laughed under his breath near the roulette tables. Routine my ass, he said. They only do this when somebody is trying to run a scam. Darius heard him. So did Naomi Brooks, the cocktail waitress still frozen beside the baccarat table, holding a tray of untouched drinks. Naomi had worked at Crown Mirage for 11 months. Long enough to recognize faces. Long enough to understand exactly how the floor operated. Wealthy white guests received smiles before they even sat down. Black guests with expensive chips received questions first. Always polite. Always professional. Always wrapped in the language of policy. But she also recognized something else now. The man standing near table 14 looked familiar. Not from television. Not from social media. Somewhere deeper inside the building itself. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Then it hit her. 3 months earlier during Executive Week, giant digital screens inside the employee conference ballroom displayed photos of the ownership board beside a presentation called the Mirage Standard. One face stayed in her memory because, unlike the others, he was not smiling in the photo. Calm eyes. Black suit. Same face. Naomi slowly lowered the tray. Across the casino floor, Ethan extended one hand toward the elevators again. Sir, this does not need to become embarrassing. Darius looked at him carefully. Too late for that. The words slid across the room softly, but several nearby gamblers exchanged looks immediately. Ethan's jaw tightened. He hated that Darius still sounded composed. Most people became defensive under pressure. Angry. Loud. Easy to remove. But Darius spoke like a man watching. Something unfolded exactly as expected. Trent adjusted his stance beside him. You heard the manager, he muttered. Move. Darius finally picked up one black casino chip from the table and rolled it slowly across his knuckles. Around him, uncomfortable. The security guard beside him tightened his jaw. Sir, this is your final warning. Darius glanced at the hand still near his shoulder. Interesting how quickly warnings show up when somebody looks out of place. Ethan folded his arms harder. You are out of place. Naomi Brooks heard that sentence clearly from 6 feet away, and something about it made her stomach tighten. Not because it sounded aggressive, because it sounded practiced. Like Ethan had said versions of it before. Nearby, a white woman in a silver evening dress leaned toward her husband while staring openly at Darius. I knew something felt off the second I saw him sitting up here, she whispered. Her husband nodded without even lowering his drink. These casinos have standards for a reason. Darius heard them both. He looked over slowly, not angry, just tired. Funny thing about standards, he said quietly. People only seem to apply them downward. The husband scoffed. Look, man, nobody is trying to insult you. But this is a high-limit floor. Some of us spend real money here. Darius looked down at the stacks of chips still sitting untouched on the table. $80,000 under the casino lights looked almost blue against the green felt. How much money qualifies as real to you, he asked. The man immediately looked away. Ethan stepped forward before the silence could spread further. This conversation is over. He nodded toward Trent. Escort him downstairs. Naomi finally spoke up. Wait. The single word cut through the noise around them. Ethan turned sharply. Naomi swallowed once, but kept going. I know him from somewhere. Trent rolled his eyes immediately. Do not start this. But Naomi kept staring at Darius. Her pulse climbed higher with every second. The owner presentation. The executive ballroom. The giant digital screen beside the phrase vision creates legacy. Same eyes. Same face. Darius noticed recognition forming on her face and said nothing. He simply watched. Ethan stepped closer to Naomi with controlled irritation. You are a cocktail server. Get back to work. Naomi looked between Ethan and Darius again. No, I am serious. I have seen him. Before. Ethan lowered his voice. You are embarrassing yourself now. But several guests nearby had already started paying even closer attention. One man lifted his phone higher to record. Another guest murmured, casino staff acting real nervous all of a sudden. Then the overhead lighting dimmed for half a second across the entire high-limit floor. Dealers froze mid-deal. Several slot machines stopped spinning completely. A soft electronic tone echoed through the ceiling speakers, followed by silence. Real silence this time. The kind casinos spend millions trying to prevent. Ethan's face changed instantly. Because casinos were never supposed to go quiet. Darius slowly reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out his phone. One message glowed across the screen. Protocol Black 7 active. Floor lockdown in progress. He looked back up at Ethan Walker with almost no emotion at all. You still think this is about a dress code? The silence lasted only 3 seconds, but inside a casino, 3 seconds without noise felt unnatural. Machines normally programmed to sing every few moments now sat frozen beneath, flashing neon. The blackjack dealer slowly removed his hands from the table, like touching anything suddenly felt dangerous. Across the high-limit floor, guests began turning in circles searching for answers, while casino staff whispered urgently into headsets that no longer seemed connected to anything useful. Ethan Walker forced a smile that looked thinner every second. Technical issue, he announced loudly. Please remain calm. Nobody believed him. Because Crown Mirage was built to survive everything. Drunk guests, fights, power outages, even earthquakes. The systems never failed all at once. Naomi Brooks stared at Darius Cole as her heartbeat climbed harder against her ribs. She knew now. There was no doubt left. The man standing beside table 14 was the same man from the executive conference screens. The founder, the owner, the billionaire nobody on the floor had recognized because they had been too busy judging what he wore. Her fingers tightened around the silver tray. Oh my God, she whispered under her breath. Ethan heard her. What? Naomi looked directly at him for the first time that night. You need to stop this right now. Trent laughed once beside Darius. What exactly are we stopping? Naomi swallowed hard. You do not understand who this is. Ethan folded his arms again, but this time the movement looked defensive instead of confident. Then explain it. Naomi glanced around first. Phones were everywhere now. Guests openly recording. Dealers watching. Pit bosses pretending not to watch while clearly listening to every word. The entire floor felt suspended between disaster and revelation. Executive week, Naomi said quietly. 3 months ago. Ballroom level. Ethan's expression did not move. Naomi continued anyway. They showed the ownership board on the giant screens during orientation. Trent frowned slightly. What are you talking about? Naomi pointed carefully toward Darius without fully extending her arm. That is Darius Cole. The words hit the casino floor harder than any jackpot siren. One guest actually laughed from disbelief. Another lowered his drink slowly. The dealer at table 14 blinked twice before staring directly at Darius with growing panic. Ethan immediately shook his head. No. But the confidence was gone now. Completely gone. Naomi stepped closer. Yes. Darius said nothing. He simply watched Ethan unravel in real time. Across the room, another system tone echoed through the ceiling. More slot machines shut down in sequence. Digital betting boards flashed error messages before going dark completely. Security radios suddenly burst alive with overlapping voices. All tables frozen. What is happening upstairs? Who activated Black 7? Ethan grabbed his own radio instantly. Control, answer me. Only static came back. Darius finally slipped his phone into his pocket again. Calm. Measured. Almost detached. You should have checked the system before touching me, he said softly. A memory hit Naomi hard in that moment. 2 weeks earlier, she watched another black guest get questioned for carrying too much cash at a baccarat table, while a white celebrity lost nearly $200,000 beside him without anyone asking a single question. Same floor. Same tone. Same suspicion hidden behind polished language. Crown Mirage sold luxury, but too often luxury came with conditions attached to skin color and appearance. Ethan looked around desperately now. He could feel the floor turning against him. Guests no longer stared at Darius like an outsider. They stared at Ethan like a man standing too close to a cliff without realizing it. Then the elevators at the far end of the casino opened all at once. 4 executives in dark suits stepped out onto the high-limit floor with security teams behind them. Nobody spoke. Nobody smiled. And every single one of them walked directly toward Darius Cole. The 4 executives crossed the casino floor fast enough to silence every remaining conversation in the room. Expensive shoes tapped sharply against marble, while security staff behind them avoided eye contact with everyone around table 14. One of the executives, a tall woman with silver-framed glasses and a charcoal suit, stepped forward immediately the moment she reached Darius Cole. Sir, she said quietly, lowering her head with visible tension. We received the Black 7 alert. Ethan Walker's face drained of color. He looked between the executives and Darius like his brain could not force the pieces together fast enough. Trent slowly removed his hand from Darius's shoulder. Too late. The entire floor had already seen it happen. Phones remained raised everywhere. Naomi stood frozen near the baccarat pit, still holding the tray against her chest, while guests whispered louder now instead of hiding it. That is him. No way. The owner. Oh, this is bad. Darius looked toward the executive woman. How long ago did the system alerts trigger? 6 minutes ago, she answered carefully. 6 minutes. The number landed heavily in the air because everybody suddenly understood the clock was still running. Ethan forced himself forward one last time. Sir, if there has been some misunderstanding, we can resolve this privately. Darius turned his eyes toward him slowly. Calm. Controlled. But colder now. Privately, he repeated. You questioned me publicly. Ethan swallowed hard. The casino lights reflected sweat along his forehead. We were following procedure. Darius nodded once. Procedure. That word pulled something old through his memory. 21 years earlier. Atlantic City. Darius was 23 years old wearing a borrowed blazer because he could not yet afford tailored suits. He sat at a blackjack table beside two older white businessmen betting more money than he had ever seen in his life. 20 minutes later, security surrounded him near the cashier cage because someone reported a young black man carrying too many chips. Nobody asked the white businessman a single question. Darius still remembered standing under fluorescent lights while another guard looked him over and said, You people always think fast money belongs to you. He remembered the shame sitting hotter than anger. He remembered promising himself something that night while staring at casino ceilings filled with cameras. One day he would own rooms like this. And if he ever did, nobody would be humiliated for simply existing inside them. The memory vanished as quickly as it came. Back in Crown Mirage, Ethan kept talking because desperate people mistake words for control. We had concerns about unauthorized access to the high-limit section. Darius looked around the floor slowly. Frozen slot machines. Silent tables. Nervous dealers. Guests recording everything. Interesting, he said softly. Because nobody seemed concerned when wealthy white guests walked in drunk last weekend and smashed $30,000 into roulette without identification. Ethan opened his mouth, but no words arrived. Naomi looked down immediately because she remembered that night too. The executive woman beside Darius activated a tablet in her hands. Her expression changed instantly as she scanned the screen. Sir, she said carefully, surveillance has already archived the interaction. Darius nodded. Good. Another executive stepped forward, now holding a security badge scanner. He looked directly at Ethan Walker. Employee credentials, please. Ethan blinked. Right now? The man did not answer twice. Across the floor, guests started murmuring again as Trent slowly unclipped his own badge with trembling fingers. Darius watched both men carefully before speaking one final sentence that settled over the casino like smoke. The dangerous part was never that you failed to recognize me, he said quietly. It was how comfortable you became disrespecting someone you thought had no power. The moment Ethan Walker handed over his badge, the entire energy of the casino changed direction. 10 minutes earlier, he had stood in the center of the high-limit floor like a man controlling the room. Now he looked like someone trying to stay upright, while the ground disappeared beneath him. The executive holding the scanner swiped Ethan's badge once. A sharp red light flashed instantly. Access revoked. Around the casino floor, employees noticed it immediately. Dealers exchanged nervous glances. Cocktail servers stopped moving entirely. Even the gamblers understood what a red access denial inside a casino meant. Somebody important had fallen hard. Trent's badge flashed red next. His face tightened as the security credentials vanished from the system in real time. Darius Cole watched both men quietly while more executives arrived through the elevators carrying tablets and compliance folders. One woman headed directly toward the surveillance stairwell without saying a word. Another began speaking with pit bosses near the roulette area. Crown Mirage was no longer operating like a casino. It was operating like a corporate crime scene. Naomi Brooks stepped back slowly as one of the executives approached her. Were you present for the entire interaction? The woman asked. Naomi nodded immediately. Yes. Did physical contact occur? Naomi hesitated only a second. Yes. The executive typed something into her tablet. Ethan immediately stepped forward. This is getting exaggerated. Nobody looked at him. That hurt more than anger would have. Darius slipped both hands into the pockets of his hoodie while the lights from frozen slot machines reflected across the polished floor behind him. "You know what the strange part is?" he said softly. Ethan looked up desperately. "Sir, please." Darius continued anyway. "You never once asked what I was doing here. You only decided I did not belong." Ethan's voice cracked slightly. "Now, I made a mistake." Darius tilted his head. "No, a mistake is spilling a drink on a guest. This was judgment." The words settled heavily across the room because everybody knew he was right. A white guest near the baccarat tables slowly lowered his phone and muttered under his breath, "Damn." Another woman shook her head while watching Ethan unravel. "They were so sure about him," she whispered. Darius turned toward the silent blackjack table again. The stacks of chips still sat untouched exactly where he left them. $80,000 under dead casino lights. A symbol now instead of money. He remembered being 28 years old walking through luxury casinos pretending not to notice how security followed him from table to table. Pretending not to hear dealers suddenly become formal the second he sat down. One night in Reno, a waitress quietly warned him that another guest complained he looked too urban for the VIP lounge. Darius never forgot how humiliation disguised itself as professionalism in places like this. Always smiling, always polite, always cruel underneath. And now he owned one of the largest casino resorts in Las Vegas only to stand inside the exact same pattern again. One of the executives approached him carefully. "Sir, gaming control has been notified. Internal review procedures have started." Darius nodded once. "Freeze all high-limit transactions for the next hour." Ethan looked horrified. "You are shutting down the entire floor?" Darius finally looked directly at him again. "No." He paused long enough for the silence to tighten around everybody listening. "You shut it down the second you decided dignity had a dress code." At that exact moment, every digital display above the high-limit section switched simultaneously to black. Then white letters appeared across the screens in clean corporate font. Temporary floor suspension in effect. Guests around the casino gasped softly as dealers stepped away from tables and security teams moved toward the entrances. Crown Mirage had officially stopped breathing. The high-limit floor looked haunted now. Rows of silent slot machines glowed without movement while unfinished hands of blackjack sat abandoned beneath crystal chandeliers. Dealers stood beside frozen tables with their hands folded in front of them like witnesses at a funeral. Guests clustered together in nervous circles whispering into phones, refreshing social media feeds, replaying videos they had recorded only minutes earlier. Crown Mirage was built to overwhelm people with noise, motion, and distraction. But now the silence exposed everything underneath it. Darius Cole remained near table 14 while executives moved around him with controlled urgency. Every few seconds, another employee lost system access somewhere on the floor. Red notifications flashed across handheld tablets. Security teams repositioned themselves near elevators and exits, not to protect Ethan Walker anymore, but to contain the fallout spreading through the building. Ethan stood completely still beside the dead blackjack table, staring at the darkened screens above him. "This cannot be happening over one misunderstanding," he said weakly. One of the executives looked up from her tablet. "We found 3 prior complaints tied to your employee file involving profiling accusations." Ethan blinked hard. "Those complaints were dismissed." "They were buried," she corrected. Naomi Brooks lowered her eyes immediately because she remembered hearing whispers about those complaints from other staff members months ago. Black guests questioned over chips. Hispanic players followed by extra security. Wealthy athletes mistaken for outsiders because they dressed casually. Everybody knew. Nobody said anything. Until now. Darius slowly stepped toward Ethan, his sneakers barely making noise against the marble floor. "You know what the problem with systems like this is?" he asked quietly. Ethan looked up, but said nothing. "People stop seeing individuals. They start seeing categories." The words spread across the silent casino like smoke under a door. Nearby guests listened carefully now because the tension had evolved into something larger than one manager losing his job. This was about a pattern, a culture, a truth too visible to deny anymore. One older black guest standing near the roulette section nodded slowly to himself. "Been happening for years," he muttered. A younger white tourist beside him lowered her phone and whispered, "I thought luxury places were better than this." The older man gave a tired smile, without humor. Luxury just learns how to hide it better. Darius heard him. He looked around the floor at the frozen games, the nervous executives, the silent dealers. Then he looked upward toward the cameras lining the ceiling. Hundreds of lenses watching everything. Funny thing about surveillance, he said softly. The cameras always record the behavior, but they cannot record the assumptions behind it. Ethan finally stepped forward again, desperate enough to ignore the disaster surrounding him. Sir, I can apologize publicly. Darius stared at him for several long seconds. You think this is about embarrassment? Ethan did not answer, because somewhere deep down, he finally understood it was worse than that. Darius continued calmly. You did not insult me because you knew me. You insulted me because you thought I was powerless. Another alert tone echoed through the casino. One executive pressed her earpiece immediately before turning toward Darius. Sir, media inquiries are already coming in. Videos from the floor are spreading online. Several guests looked down at their phones at the exact same moment. Headlines were already appearing across social feeds. Casino owner profiled at his own resort. VIP floor shut down after discrimination incident. Naomi felt chills run through her arms. 12 minutes earlier, she had been carrying drinks through a normal Friday night. Now the entire casino industry was about to watch Crown Mirage collapse in real time. Darius took one slow breath before speaking again. Good, he said quietly. Maybe now people will finally understand the difference between security and prejudice. Outside the towering glass walls of Crown Mirage, flashing news vans had already begun pulling into the circular driveway beneath the gold casino sign. Inside, the high-limit floor remained suspended in unnatural silence while guests refreshed their phones watching the story explode across the internet in real time. Videos from Table 14 were everywhere now. One clip showed Trent's hand gripping Darius Cole's shoulder. Another captured Ethan Walker saying, "You are out of place." Millions of people were beginning to watch a 12-minute collapse unfold frame by frame. Ethan stood near the frozen blackjack table like a man trapped inside his own reflection. Every confident sentence he had spoken earlier now echoed back at him through nearby phone speakers. He looked smaller somehow, less like management, more like evidence. One executive approached Darius carefully. Sir, legal wants confirmation before issuing the official statement. Darius nodded once. Tell them the statement is simple. We failed the standard. The executive hesitated. Publicly, Darius looked across the silent casino floor. Especially publicly. Naomi Brooks watched him closely from beside the baccarat pit. That was the part that shook her most. He was not screaming, not threatening lawsuits, not humiliating people for revenge. He stood there calmer than everyone else in the room while an empire shifted around him. That kind of control felt heavier than anger ever could. Nearby, two dealers whispered to each other quietly. He could destroy everybody right now. The other dealer looked toward Darius and shook his head slowly. No, he is trying to fix something. Another elevator opened at the far end of the floor. This time members of the casino ownership board stepped out alongside compliance attorneys and senior operations directors. Their expressions turned grim immediately when they saw the frozen gaming floor. One of them, a white man in his 60s named Bernard Whitmore, approached Darius directly. I came as soon as I saw the alerts. Darius nodded slightly. Then you also saw the footage. Bernard exhaled heavily. Yes. He glanced toward Ethan Walker for only a second before looking away again. That single glance carried more finality than yelling ever could. Ethan noticed it too. Mr. Whitmore, I can explain. Bernard interrupted him immediately. No, you cannot. Silence swallowed the room again. Darius slowly walked toward the center of the floor beneath the giant chandelier, hanging above the blackjack pit. Every eye followed him. Now, dealers, executives, security, tourists, wealthy gamblers, cocktail servers. The entire room rotated around him without anyone realizing it. He looked toward the dark screens above the floor before speaking calmly enough that people leaned forward to hear him. You thought I was trespassing, he said. I own the air conditioning you are breathing. Several guests actually gasped. One woman lowered her phone slowly while another man muttered, "Damn," under his breath. Ethan closed his eyes briefly as the weight of the sentence settled over him completely. Because that was the moment the situation stopped being a scandal and became humiliation. Not for Darius. For everyone who helped judge him before knowing his name. Naomi felt tears sting unexpectedly behind her eyes. Not from sadness, from recognition. Every black employee on the floor knew exactly what this moment meant. The suspicion, the assumptions, the exhausting pressure of needing to look expensive before being treated human. Darius continued softly. The problem is not that you failed to recognize the owner. He looked directly at Ethan now. The problem is how comfortable you became degrading someone you believed nobody important would defend. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Bernard Whitmore turned toward the executives standing beside him and gave a quiet order that echoed louder than shouting ever could. Terminate all involved personnel immediately. Effective now. And just like that, every remaining illusion of control disappeared from the Crown Mirage casino floor. The removal orders moved through Crown Mirage faster than the slot machine lights could flicker back on. Executive tablets updated in real time across the frozen casino floor, while security teams quietly escorted Ethan Walker and Trent Dawson away from the high-limit section they once controlled with complete confidence. Nobody resisted. Nobody argued anymore. The collapse had already happened. All that remained was watching it settle into reality. Guests stood shoulder to shoulder near the darkened tables, phones raised high, recording the final moments of a story that would spread across every major platform before sunrise. Dealers whispered among themselves while compliance officers moved from table to table documenting everything. The casino no longer felt like entertainment. It felt like accountability finally arriving at full speed. Darius Cole stood beneath the chandelier at the center of the floor, while the lights above reflected across the polished marble like cold water. 12 minutes earlier, he had been treated like an intruder. Now the entire building revolved around his next sentence. Bernard Whitmore approached carefully once the termination orders were complete. All access privileges have been revoked, he said quietly. Human resources and legal teams are handling the rest. Darius nodded once. No celebration. No smile. Just quiet acknowledgement. Naomi Brooks watched him from beside the baccarat pit and realized something important in that moment. Power did not always sound loud. Sometimes it sounded calm enough to force everyone else to hear themselves clearly for the first time. Nearby, one of the younger dealers shook his head slowly. He never even raised his voice, he whispered. Another employee answered softly. He did not have to. Outside the towering casino windows, media cameras now crowded the entrance driveway, while luxury cars slowed to watch the chaos unfolding inside Crown Mirage. Online, the videos had already crossed millions of views. People argued in comment sections. Some called it justice. Others called it exposure. But almost everyone agreed on one thing. The footage revealed something deeper than one bad manager. It revealed how quickly dignity disappears when people think nobody powerful is watching. Darius slowly walked back toward table 14. The untouched stacks of chips still waited under the dead casino lights exactly where he left them. He stared at them for a long moment before speaking quietly enough that the room leaned in again. The saddest part about tonight is not what happened to me, he said. It is how normal this felt to everyone before the truth showed up. Silence answered him immediately, because every person standing there understood exactly what he meant. Naomi remembered all the moments staff members exchanged. Looks over black guests carrying expensive chips, the unnecessary identification checks, the extra security presence, the coded language about looking suspicious. None of it had started tonight. Tonight simply exposed it under brighter lights. Darius turned slowly toward the employees still gathered around the floor. Crown Mirage was never supposed to become a place where respect depended on appearance, he said. Luxury without dignity is just expensive discrimination. Several workers lowered their eyes after hearing that. One older dealer quietly wiped tears from his face. Bernard Whitmore stepped beside Darius. We will issue reform